Welcome, everyone, to the 10-Minute University 10 Concepts for Accessible Gardening Strategies for Low Maintenance, Lifelong Gardening. When I'm talking with my friends who are gardeners, and most of my friends are gardeners, it's not long before we start talking about some of the difficulties that we're having with pain due to bodies that are breaking down, gardens that are just too much to manage, and just a general disease with what's going on in our bodies and trying to maintain the gardens. I also have conversations with friends who are much younger in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who would like to garden, but find the stress of maintaining a garden that they want, along with careers, family, and other obligations, just to be too much. So, what we'd like to do today is to explore ways that we can either create or adapt the gardens that we have into things that are low maintenance and something that is a joy to be in and not have to stress so much about maintenance chores. So before we jump in, I'd like to pause and have you answer two questions. Picture yourself in your garden. What part of the garden brings you the most joy? What is the scene in your mind? What are the sounds that you hear? Is there a scent in the air that makes you go, ah? So that's your happy place in the garden. Now for question number two, I want you to think of the part of your garden that is just a chore, that part that always has weeds that you just can't get under control. It's a challenge to reach, and you plant things there and they never seem to be happy. Weeds, 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 my nemesis. That's what I think of the part of the garden that I just don't like. So Anne Lovejoy, one of my favorite garden writers, asked these questions of her students. When I was researching this webinar, I found an article written by Anne in the Fine Gardening Archive, How to Create a Low Maintenance Garden. To me, aging in place, something I think about a lot these days, must have the elements of a garden that is easy to care for, in a place that I can navigate through with ease, and a place that is regenerative to body and soul. And Anne suggested ways to adapt our gardens to meet these needs. I found it inspiring, and I asked her permission to share some of her thoughts with you today. And her response was, spread the word. How can we create sustainable landscapes and gardens that sit lightly on the earth, recycling as many resources as possible, and needing little intervention? What happens when we give preference to plants that thrive with the climate, soil type, and water distribution pattern our bioregions offer naturally? What if we place plants where their natural attributes, such as mature size and shape, are an asset to our design? Can we make gardens that grow old gracefully with us and are more rewarding than demanding? So that's the challenge. Adapting our gardens to work with us rather than creating obstacles. We need to create pathways to move through the garden safely and with ease. We need to create a garden that demands little of us in terms of weeding, watering, fertilizing, and pruning. And we need to figure out ways to build and maintain a garden that fits our budget. So we have to start answering these questions. Where? Where's your garden going to be? Maybe you want to have that section around your house as your garden space and leave the perimeters in a more natural style. How much time do you want to spend in the garden each week? How are you going to make it happen? Last year, my husband and I ran smack up against these questions. I injured my right shoulder, and between pain, surgery, and rehab, I was out for the entire year. My husband, who enjoys gardening, and he is an energizer buddy when it comes to weeding and projects, but this was just too much to handle on our own, especially when I spent the summer with my right arm in a shoulder sling. So we sat down in our favorite place in the garden and made plans to transform our least favorite place in the garden into something we could manage in the coming years. As Anne writes, take a hard look at what the future may be like, and how do you imagine you will cope with changing physical abilities? Where do you spend the most chore time in the garden? And which part of the garden is the most enjoyable? Rarely are these two places the same. Identifying high maintenance areas helps us to make smart choices about which garden features to alter or eliminate. Each choice will free up a bit more time and energy. And that brings us to concept 1, making an assessment. Taking an honest look at your space and figuring out what needs to change is the first thing you need to do. This can be because you no longer have the strength and stamina to garden as you used to, or perhaps you're busy with family and a job and want to spend more time enjoying or maintaining your yard. You can also decide what is important to you in a garden. In the slides throughout this presentation, you will see how almost any garden style can be made more accessible, be it vegetable, fruit, shrubs, beautiful borders, conifers, or maybe it's just a patio or deck where you've got lots of wonderful plants all around you. What's your garden style? This is one of my favorite tools that many people don't know about. I mean, who hasn't checked out the satellite view of their own place, right? But did you know that Google has a measuring tool? In the options under More, you get the satellite view and you click More, and there's a section labeled Measure. And this way you can take and just with a click of the button, measure your space, and it will give you like, so this is 200 foot long. And then when I close the loop, it gives me this automatic area calculated for me. Some counties can give you access to geographical information systems for your land, and it's free and it's easy to use if you want to look at satellite shots from the past to the present. Clackamas County updates every 2 years. So by looking at your garden from above, the change of perspective may give you new ideas for changing or improving your garden. So concept number 2, after you've assessed what you need to do, think about repetitive chores that you can eliminate. In our case, we decided that a part of the lawn had to go. And Mark removed 1,600 square feet of problematic lawn and replaced it with crushed gravel paths and a pollinator garden planting beds. The plants were chosen for their benefits to wildlife, drought tolerance, and low maintenance. This brings our lawn down from 15,000 square feet when we purchased the place in 2012 to just 2,000 square feet now. The paths are a joy to walk on, making getting around the yard much easier. When the baby plants fill in, it will be glorious. An added bonus is a seedling from the enormous Gary oak across the fence line has established itself in the pollinator garden and has a much better chance of thriving without watering from the lawn. Now, this was a lot of work. But as Mark commented, when you weed, it's back in a week. When you build a path in a garden bed, you don't have to do it all over again in just a few days. One of the advantages we have is that we started early enough and we were, at least Mark was in physical shape, to do all of this work ourselves. So we saved a lot of money doing that. It was very much a do-it-yourself project. I had the incredibly difficult job of researching and choosing plants. Oh, so much work. Even worse, I had to go to nurseries and I had to purchase so many plants. Life is hard, but someone's got to do it. Hardscape includes the built part of the garden. Paths, stairs, patios, retaining walls, decks, all of these come under the hardscape rule. So finding solutions that are going to help you move through the garden is really important thing to begin with. And it's one of the first things that you want to do if you're planning a new space in your garden. Although wheelchair access often comes to mind when discussing garden accessibility, and it's an important consideration. Everyone benefits from well-designed garden paths. Ramps are easier than stairs, but the standard wheelchair ramp ratio of 1 inch rise to 12 inches of length is really big and often hard to accommodate in tight spaces and old structures. People with vision impairment or balance issues, people on crutches, and even gardeners lugging watering cans or pushing a wheelbarrow all appreciate a smooth, level, easy, navigable path. One of the things that's so much easier to do these days is to install landscape lighting. I've used solar lights for several years now, and I've been really happy with the results. I can choose what color of light I'm going to get, whether it's a warm glow or in areas that I really need good visibility. I can have a brighter white color. They shine all night long in the summertime, and even in our dark, cloudy winter days, they will come on at dusk and last at least until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So let's talk about pathways and some of the materials that you can use. So concrete is one of the best options for accessible, long-lasting paths. It's smooth, it's relatively non-slip, and the seams are very narrow and infrequent. It's a really great option for people who are in a wheelchair or think that they might be in the future. Asphalt paving is less expensive. The paths are smooth and easy to navigate. You don't see a lot of it in residential areas, but it's certainly an option. Crushed stone is gravel made of small sized, angularly shaped stones, individual pieces that lock together and pack down, creating a very hard surface, especially if it's tamped down well. One of the things that you want to think about if you decide for the gravel path is don't get pea gravel for pathways because it is very round and it collapses among itself. It moves around a lot. So it's not a nice solid surface for moving from place to place. But it's beautiful and it's really easy on your feet. Wood is another option, can be really attractive. It's difficult to construct into a nice smooth flat surface. Some of the synthetic wood things that they have now for decking and all is a really good option because they last so much longer and they're zero maintenance. Mulch is another attractive way to create pathways, but it readily scatters and erodes, and it creates a rough, unstable surface that's really not suitable for wheelchairs or walkers. But if you're starting your plan, you don't have the finances to put in one of the more expensive options, it's a great place to start. And then if you need a way to create more permanent pathways, your pathway is already laid out and your landscape is designed around it. And then you could go in and add gravel or concrete, whatever you need. So know your climate zones and soil, concept 4. Most nurseries in your area will provide plants that are appropriate to the zone in which they're located. But be aware of microclimates in your garden and sun exposure. Mophead hydrangea will be perfectly content on the east side of the house with morning sun, but it's going to suffer on the west side exposed to afternoon sun. So think about your plant and what it needs and not just the climate zone that you're in. This is available at this website, United U.S. Plant Hardiness Zone Map. You've got the whole United States, and you can zoom in on your area and see what the minimum temperatures it will take for most plants. That's a great place to start. Shown here are photos of a strawberry tree and a native madrone. Now, your soil type and the amount of sunlight it gets will help determine the plants that will be good low maintenance often. But climate change has caused weather patterns that are stressful to plants and the gardeners that love them. These two trees are in the same family. They were about 75 feet apart. The strawberry tree is not native to our area, to Pacific Northwest, but the madrone tree is, and it was here. It was old. It's been here since I bought the place in 2012. The strawberry tree I put in 2012, I believe, as well. But it was going gangbusters, just a beautiful tree. But this winter, Mother Nature said, ha, I'm going to throw this at you. And we had days of temperatures that did not get above the mid-20s. And at nighttime, it was down into the teens. And although both of these plants are rated for zone 7, um, which is what, and we're in zone 8, it could not take that cold. And so we lost the strawberry tree. The madrone, I think, is going to make it, and you can see it's got a lot of new growth. But just be aware that when you're planting, sometimes the climate zones are not always infallible. There's a couple of websites and videos that we've got that you can take a look at. Really worthwhile is making your garden more climate resilient, adapting your soil, and the soil and planting lessons from research. Both got a lot of really good information. So more on soil, here in Western Washington, we get muck or we get dried muck. It's kind of like there's not really a happy medium, it seems like most of the time. But there are plants that thrive in these conditions. Hostas, though, while they're not native, are really great, terrific for dry shade under trees. And the sneezeweed, this is a cultivar, but there is a native sneezeweed, and it survives beautifully in wet winter weather and then dry summer. It just grows like crazy. So when you have your soil, take a look at what you've got and work with it accordingly. And if you've got a raised bed, choose the proper container mix. You don't want to use your garden soil in a raised bed or container. Again, here's the climate resilient garden. Back to the naturescaping. We've seen this before, but just some of the things that we need to think about is when you're trying to create a low maintenance landscape, there are some simple techniques that emulate nature. Choose plants that are native plants that are adapted to light soil and the moisture in your area. Leave the leaves and the spent flowers and the dead wood. Reduces the need for watering, herbicides, and insecticides, and requires less maintenance once established. Now, when you getting these beds established, it does take a little bit because you're going to have watering that you need to do for the first year or two to get the plants established. And then you don't want to just have them in dry soil because that's just an invitation for weeds. And so you want to put a good mulch on, and we'll talk about mulch a little bit later on. So it can be fairly easy to establish, but you need to make the proper conditions for it. This from the Garden Ecology Lab, Urban Garden Bee Traits, and it's kind of my philosophy of gardening. And sometimes the greatest benefits may be yielded by doing less in gardens, like leaving leaves, patches of bare soil, small logs, and dead stems for a ground and cavity nesting species. Reducing management or tidiness in gardens is an important practice which doesn't require any financial input. And there's a link to that article there. So now we've talked about climate and soil, let's look about the plants that we're going to select. When choosing plants for a low maintenance garden, you want to work with your climate and your soil. You choose plants that are well adapted to your area, and they will take much less work. They don't all have to be natives. Ornamentals are welcome, but make sure that it's an ornamental that's going to work well in the soil and the climate that you have. Planting densely is also a great way to diminish weeds. And here we're going to explore some beautiful gardens with very different design aesthetics, but that are all low maintenance. So this colorful, lush landscape is surprisingly very low maintenance. This is under the bed. It's in a bed under the high shade of an 80-foot Atlantic cedar. So everything must do well in dryish soil. The maple forms the backbone and the focal point in this garden. In late spring, the owner crawls underneath these low branches to prune it. Now, that is something that is not necessarily an easy task for someone who's injured or old. And so in that case, you can find an arborist or someone to come do that work for you. That's part of adapting as we grow older, doing what we can, and then finding someone to do the few things that we can't do. The colors that she's chosen in monochromatic color combination for the flowers. So there's like pink and mauve, and then basically all a soft color combination, and occasionally a soft peach to contrast with that. The dense planting shades the soil so well that the weeds are not an issue. Perennials get watered once a week, and shrubs get watered once a month. And the maple, surprisingly to me, gets no supplemental water at all. She's also done some things that we talked about earlier, and that is for the hardscape. She's got a nice level area path along here, and this is a great spot to put a seating area, which is one of the things that we don't have a lot of examples of in this program, but it's really important to have lovely seating areas throughout your garden so that if you're gardening and you want to just take a break, it's steps away. You don't have to walk into the house or something like that. And it's a lovely way to just sit and enjoy your beautiful garden. This very sculptural landscape is a garden created by Neil Bell. He's a horticulturist and professor at Oregon State University. And you can find his webinar on ground covers of every size on the 10-minute university videos created in 2024. I'm sorry, every size for non-irrigated landscapes, better yet. The pink flowering plant in the foreground is a rock rose, and on the right is Artemisia over here. Behind these is lavender, and on the left of that is another white blooming rock rose right here. In the back is phlox. I'm sorry, phlox, and then phlomis. That's the yellow blooming shrub back here. So you can see you've got a lovely sitting area here, and then this landscape that really doesn't take any work at all. In fact, the rock roses really resent being pruned, so that's kind of sweet. Most of these are just very easy care and need no water at all in the summertime. If you're looking for low maintenance landscape and you like a more tidy look, conifers are really stellar choice. They're usually slow growing, they're drought tolerant, and they don't need much pruning to look good all year long. During the heat dome that we had a couple of summers ago, I had some conifers that got brown needles on the tips, and they just kind of looked scorched. But I left them alone, and 2 years later, you could never tell that there was a problem. So they're very resilient plants. They often look really well with some great rocks around them and stuff. It's just a lovely, lovely look. So this is what we had when we moved in, and this is 10 years later. It's a mix of natives and ornamentals. And the only weed issue that we have, talking about naturescaping again, is that we get thistles that come up all the time in the summertime. And there's just doesn't seem to be anything that we can do to discourage them. We dig them up, they come back. I've had some volunteers here. So this willow tree is a volunteer, which on a dry bed that gets no water, I thought, are you nuts? But it's been happy. And then the fireweed is also a volunteer. And I just find that such a beautiful look. When it starts to go to seed, I cut it down so that it doesn't invade all of my neighbors' nicely manicured landscapes and lawns. But when I cut it down, the flowers come back again, so I get double bonus. One of the maintenance issues that I'm discovering is that the salal, which is apparently hard to establish in a lot of places, seems to be very happy at my house and taking over everything. So I can either let it go and let it take over the things that I want, but right now I'm still got the energy to push it back a little bit and make it behave a little bit more. There's so many wonderful native plants, native cultivars, and plants that are adapted to our region that you can really have fun creating a garden that suits your taste precisely. Now, when researching this project, I reached out to several gardeners to ask for the solutions that they created to solve some of their accessibility issues. And concept 6 will be all about working around the challenges we face by gardening. Problem solved. First one I want to talk about is Mary Ellen, and she wrote me and sent me some pictures. She says, some suggestions I have incorporated into my gardening. I walk with a shovel for equilibrium. Never actually thought about that, but it's a good one, especially if you have a lightweight shovel. I use a kneading pad with handles to help get up. I have a good sprinkler system, and I have hoses that reach where I need to water. And I hire gardeners to lift and move the heavy pots or plants, install railings on stairs and steep slopes. I work almost every day until my back aches, which for now is about 2 to 3 hours. And then I go in and lay on my heating pad. And I'm young, only 76. I always have thought of handrails on stairs, but I actually had never considered it on slopes. And I think this is just a lovely look. And you can see she's got some rocks here that kind of help give a stopping space on the slope so that make it almost step-like. And then she's got beautiful terracing that makes it so much easier to garden on a slope. So that this was a good solution for aging in place. This garden is in Sacramento, California. Belongs to a friend of mine, and I had seen the transformation on Facebook, and I thought, this is just lovely, and it looks so easy to maintain. This was right after the garden had been put in, so none of these plants have really had a chance to fill out. But I wrote to her and said, so can I have a picture of what it looked like before so that we can compare? And she sent me this picture and she said, make sure to tell them that I broke my hip out there before we did the remake because I lost my balance on the small round rock ground cover while reaching for my kitten in the tree. So talk about solving a problem with landscape that just doesn't work for you and making a really lovely area that can very useful. And I've seen pictures of this patio here in at Halloween, and they've got it all decorated and nice seating. It's just a really lovely space. So that's a good problem solved. This is a photo of the Fishingham Garden, and it's actually kind of world famous. It's been featured in Hardy Plant Society and in several other publications. It's a small lot in Arbor Lodge area of Portland. It's 50 by 100. And when they moved in, it was all lawn. And so they ripped out the lawn and established this garden that is basically very easy to move around in. It's pavers and concrete. The weeder in chief, Jeff Fisher, he's dealing with CRPS, and that's complex regional pain syndrome. So he's the one that does most of the maintenance, but yet he's got some real mobility and pain issues. And so he's created a lot of ways to deal with that. But first, let's take a look at this garden. Again, 50 by 100 feet. So this is 50 feet. They've got the garage. Over here is a small deck. And then they've got a seating area with a fire pit, dining area. Over here out of screen is a garden shed and a vegetable garden. So there's a lot packed into this space. And Jeff's use of the colors apple green, orange, and purple, he was a graphic designer and has an incredible eye, really add a lot of life and joy, but continuity to this garden. Some of Jeff's practical solutions are having a dustpan that you can stand up and use and then empty easily without having to bend over. Taking it up a notch, this is a garden sweeper that you just push along the walkway and it sweeps everything up and then it can be emptied. Again, here's the standard kneeler thing that you can flip over and you can sit on. I just bought one this year and I'm so happy I did. Just really makes life easier. And when you're gardening, weeding on wood chips, it's a lot easier on the knees. This I thought was brilliant, and I hadn't ever seen it or thought of it, is putting a trash can for basically all of your weeds or even perhaps your garden tools to take around with you. But it's on wheels so that it just rolls along on the pavers really beautifully. And my award for greatest multiple use tool is this garden cart. You can see they've got basil in it right now, but that's all in pots. And when they throw a party, which seems to happen fairly regularly according to their Instagram account, they take out the basil, they put in ice, and it becomes a bar cart. So that's just a lovely way of using it, and I appreciated that. So you've solved some of the problems, but now you have to care for the garden. There is going to be maintenance no matter what. We're gardeners and we enjoy that. And so the act of caring for the garden is one of the things that bring us joy. So once the physical barriers are eliminated, the second step is to adapt the gardener with specialized tools and techniques. And there are many specialized gardening tools, equipment, and techniques available to gardeners to help reduce the effort and maximize abilities, and to encourage independence while you're working in the garden. The goal is to protect muscles and joints from fatigue and injury while finding the best match for the garden task being done. Examples of adapted equipment are modified handles, clippers with a side strap, long-handled tools, and lightweight portable seats and tools. There is a whole webinar on this. It's called The Enabled Gardener, and it's the YouTube video link is down there. You can also find it at our 10-Minute University website under the video links. But one of the things you need to think about is how are you going to irrigate? So an underground system is great, and you can just set it on a timer, set and forget, but it's expensive. Other options are soaker hoses and drip irrigation. You can also set those up to be basically on a timer where they go on at a certain time and off at a certain time. These are really useful for like when you're establishing plants that aren't going to need an irrigation system, but they just need a year or two of being watered. Soaker hoses and drip irrigation is just a tremendous way to do that. Fruit trees, a lot of people like fruit trees, and they have some really wonderful dwarf varieties that do very well in containers and pots. Um, I happen to like the espalier system, and we have in our yard apples, pears, Japanese pear, and fig, all espalier. It's not necessarily what you would consider low maintenance because it does take work to get it pruned into that shape. But it's for us, it's an enjoyable task, and it has the ability to keep the fruit at a really nice, accessible level. So nothing gets too tall and where you can't reach it. This is really a way to go. And the last tip is gather your tools, everything you might need before you start out in the garden. And I use a wheelbarrow. Now that I've got a little bit more accessible paths, I may use Jeff's garbage can on wheels. But just having everything that I might need right there, I get so frustrated going out and I'm at the back 40 of the yard and I need something that's up in the garage and, trudge back and forth because I don't think ahead. So now everything just stays in one place and I dump it all in and take it with me. Weeds. Ugh. So I always like to have a picture of what I'm trying to talk about because I'm a very visual thinker. So I put weeding in my Canva search engine, and I thought I just want to get the visual point across about how obnoxious I think weeding is. And so I said, okay, find me photos of weeding. And the first photo that came up was this. And I thought, okay, whoever came up with this photo for weeding was not a gardener. And I actually laughed out loud. So I thought, okay, let me try again. Let me find another one. So I did another one and I came up with this. And I thought, well, that's better. She's, using a garden tool delicately. Again, not quite such a huge smile on her face, but a really cute outfit. It's all clean and tidy. That's not quite what I was looking for either. Let me try again. And then this one came up and I thought, that's more like it. a woman who is just so totally not happy to be on her hands and knees in the garden in a mismatched gardening outfit, yanking on weeds. That's what I was looking for how I feel about weeding. Some people get a real satisfaction out of maintaining a beautiful lawn. I even have met a few people who get great satisfaction from weeding. I do not understand these people, but I'm very glad they're in the world. So if I don't want to weed, how am I going to handle that? Have I got a treat for you? On our 10-minute university site, there's a link to a video from guest lecturer Dr. Linda Chalker Scott of Washington State University. She goes through, in an amusing way, research about all sorts of ways to mulch to suppress weeds. She covers landscape cloth, inorganic mulch, organic mulch, and discusses what doesn't work and why. And I wish I had this information when we started transforming our garden 10 years ago. It would have saved me a lot of time and money and weeding. So these two photos are from a plot that tested arborist mulch around Douglas fir seedlings, and the depth that they tested were 4, 8, and 12 inches. Now, arborist mulch is the mulch that you get when arborists cut down trees, and then they put it all through the wood chipper, and you get that very coarse chunks of wood. But it's a good system, and in our area, it's still free. You can call up and they can have it delivered to your house for no money at all. So the amazing thing in this plot that they were testing was 1 year later, you can see the weed growth all around the wood chips, but not in the actual squares. And nothing had been done to this site. It shows how effective this mulch layer worked. They also compared mulch plots versus plots that had been treated with an herbicide to keep weeds at bay, and they found that the plants in mulch plots were larger, grew more vigorously, produced fruit earlier and in greater quantities, and had a higher survival rate. So if you want to have a lot less weed working, pick the right kind of mulch, and it's really going to help. Raised beds are another garden friend for people who don't want to have to bend down, work on their hands and knees, and have easily accessed plants. So ideal height is 24 to 30 inches. So it's just a nice working area. Ideally, if you're in a wheelchair, the arm should be waist high when you're working. You can work a lot longer that way without stress to the shoulders and arms. The depth from the front to back in a raised bed, the maximum should be 48 inches if both sides are accessible, and 36 inches is actually better. No more than 2 feet across if you can only reach it from one side. And wheelchair access, for standard beds, someone working from a wheelchair would have to twist to the side to work. So in that case, there are better options available. This trug type raised bed is great because you can get the wheelchair right up in there, and you can have plants that don't need a lot of roots area on the sides, and then plants that need more right down there in the middle. And then this bed where you can wheel the chair right in, again, have the shallower rooted plants there, and then deeper rooted plants on the sides. That is actually I just checked it today. This website is still good, and it gives you the PDF plans to make this bed. So it's got all the construction plans you need. We also have a raised bed garden from the OSU extension, and there's a whole thing on that right there. So take a look at those and get some ideas for your raised beds. Containers are another way to look at doing garden with less work and more flexibility. And some of the things that you can do, I actually have several trees in containers that I have on my decks. And then this one tree that is a volunteer, it planted itself in this pot while it was empty. And I thought, well, let's see what that tree is. And found out it's a liquid amber, but it has absolutely spectacular foliage in the fall. And this pot is small enough that I can move it around. It's got handles. I can move it around from place to place when I want a garden accent of beautiful color in the fall. Um, the thermoform nursery containers, these black pots here, usually have handles. They're very inexpensive. They're not elegant looking, but they're manageable for me. So I've got a lot of them, and I really enjoy having that flexibility. Another thing that you can do is having the garden bag system here, grow pots. And this one is on an automatic drip system, and it gets a bounty of vegetables. This is 1 day's harvest from this garden. Again, easily accessed, and it's on a drip system, so not a lot of work to water. Thing to remember is that due to the small size of most containers versus gardening in the ground, along with the fact that you're likely not using any actual soil in your containers, you'll have to fertilize your plants more often because the plants won't have access to the nutrients typically found in topsoil. A good quality compost will continue some of the contain some of the nutrients, but it will need to be supplemented to give plants everything they need throughout the season. So you just use a balanced conventional water soluble or controlled release fertilizer, and you're good to go. But again, you're doing a trade-off for maintenance and having to water and fertilize more frequently than you would than if they were in the ground. And if you're doing a raised bed and you aren't considering wheelchair, having a little bench to sit on around the bed is just delightful. So as you're doing your assessment and you're thinking about how can my garden change? What do I need to do? What am I going to plan? When you're planning a low maintenance gardening, think about how you use your space now and what you will need in the future. So this deck needed replacement, and it was extended 3 feet, which gave plenty of room to have a dining table with access all the way around it. And then it was extended out this way, which allowed, this is where we've got a watering trough, and it's got the espaliered Japanese pear and then strawberries growing down below it. And there's another dining area right out here. One of the great things about this is it gives a lot of gardening space, but it also gives access to the garden from the house. All of this is down below. There's a garden down below, which is not easily accessible if you're injured, but you can look at it from up above. And having a deck here makes it really easy to clean the windows up on this second story. So caring for the gardener. We've talked about caring for the garden. Let's talk about caring for the gardener. Physical activity can decrease pain and increase physical function by up to 40%. But people may find an exercise program intimidating or boring. So gardening is a great alternative form of exercise. That's from Ohio Agri-Ability, and that is on the links that you'll be receiving, or that at the end of this program. So again, we're going to talk about assessment. How mobile are you? What devices do you use to help increase your mobility? Can you kneel? And more importantly, can you get up again? Can you reach overhead? What is your endurance level? Is your lifting ability limited by grip, mobility, or strength? And how's your balance? So addressing all of these things is something that we can look at, number one, just by choosing the right tools. And I'm going to quickly go through this. An example of caring for yourself is having like the right size tools. So long handled tools should be between the chin and the top of the head in height. So that's too short, that's too tall, and this one is just right. And the objective is to use good posture and to keep your back straight. So stay safe, strong, and work longer. Find positions that keep your back straighter. So this is not going to be a position that's going to be helpful to your back. Using a split stance helps you keep your back straighter And you can change stance from knee to knee to help you keep mobile and not get stuck in one position. Um, warm up by swinging your arms. It's actually not recommended to do stretching when you are starting to garden, when you're just warming up. Save that until after you've done your gardening, when your muscles are more loose, or in the middle of gardening. Like sometimes I use a lumbar stretch when my back is getting to me. So strengthening exercises help prevent overuse injuries, and they should not cause pain or discomfort. Talk to your therapist or your care provider if you have a pre-existing injury. So stretching and strengthening. I had the amazing good fortune of running across Kevin Jarvis when I was starting my shoulder rehab. Like I said, I was out for a year, and I not only lost a lot of mobility and strength in my shoulder, but in my entire body, because I'm one of those people that, for me, my exercise is gardening, and I hadn't done it for a year. So I was feeling really down and depressed one day when I went in to see Kevin, and I just said, I just feel like an old, decrepit woman. And he looked at me and he said, "No, I do not treat old, decrepit women. I treat athletes. And gardening is an athletic endeavor, and you are an athlete. You're just in training." And I just love that because it made me feel like, okay, I've got a purpose and I'm going to get better. So I've asked Kevin to share a couple of things, exercises that are easy to do. The stretches, do every day when you get up. It would be really helpful. And do 10 to 15 repetitions. Go through the series. And then if you got some more energy, you want to do some more, do it again.
All right, guys, so first thing I want to show you some stretches. So I've got 3 pretty simple stretches that you can follow, and it'd be good to do these probably after you do your gardening. So first one, in gardening we do a lot of forward bending. So a lot of these drills I want to try to open up the front of your hips and stretch the back in the opposite direction, okay? So the first one is a lumbar extension, okay? So what that looks like is just hands on the hips, and then we're just going to do a gentle backward stretch. Okay, we don't want this to cause any pain or discomfort, just nice and easy, okay? We're just doing a little extension and back up. So everybody's range might be a little different, but we just want it to be nice and comfortable. And number 2, I want to try to stretch the hip flexor for the same reason, because we've been forward bending a lot with the gardening. So we're going to stride the leg we want to stretch backwards. Okay, so this is my left leg right now. And then we can hold on to something if we have some balance problems. Okay, so I've got a little table here I can hold on to. And what we want to do, we want to kind of squeeze this left glute to tuck our pelvis underneath. And then I can stride forward just a little bit until I feel that stretch to the very front of my hip. Okay. Some of you that are a little more advanced, what you could do is you could do a little reach up with that opposite arm, and that might give you a little more stretch up into the belly. Okay, so that's a great stretch to open those hips up. Number 3, we want to do one for the spine. So this is just really good mobility for the low back. So what you'll need is you go on all fours, okay? And what we're going to do is one called the cat-cow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to arch my back downward, and then I'm going to arch it and push it up sky high up to the ceiling. Okay, I'm going to stretch and then back down. Okay, and same thing, this should be pain-free, comfortable, okay, within your range. These stretches should feel really nice, they should feel good, no discomfort, okay? All right, guys, so lastly, we're going to do 3 strengthening exercises. Now, these would be something that I want you to work on when you're not gardening, so maybe on your off days, okay? So kind of like some cross training. So you're going to do a lot of your gardening, and that's going to take up most of your time, but if you can sneak a couple of these strengthening drills in, maybe a couple times a week, it'd be super beneficial for your endurance and your strength when you're out there working, okay? So I'm going to teach you 3 moves. So I've got a little weight here. It doesn't really matter if you use weight or if you don't, okay? But the first thing I want to do is learn how to kind of hinge from my hip, okay? So I'm going to take my kettlebell here. I'm going to put it right in between my legs. I want shoulder width stance, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bottom backwards and then a slight bend in my knees. Keep my chest up high and my eyes forward, okay? And then I'm going to come straight back up and then I'm going to squeeze my glutes up top, okay? So the keys are kind of butt back first so that we're not shooting our knees too far forward, okay? So my butt goes back, my chest is up, I drop the weight in between my legs, I keep it close into my body, and then I come up and I squeeze the glutes up top, okay? So that's our hip hinge. Our second one, we're going to kind of isolate the single leg, and it's going to be kind of a runoff of that hip hinge. Okay, this is called the golfer's pickup. You'll see these guys do this in golf a lot, actually, when they pick their ball out of the hole. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a little balance support. Okay, I'm going to have my right foot down, and then what I'm going to do on a single leg is I'm going to do that little hip hinge. I'm going to kick my back leg out, and then I'm going to come back up. So I'm really working my right leg in this case, okay? And I'm trying to keep my back really neutral in that spinal neutral position that I talked about earlier, okay? So left leg kicks back, I dip down, try to keep my back nice and straight, and then back up. If you're a little more advanced, you could put your weight in that offhand, right? Or you could take your hand off and try to work your balance at the same time. And that might look something like this. And then back up, okay? Okay, the last exercise you guys called the bird dog. And so that's gonna strengthen the back muscles, it's gonna strengthen the hips, and it's gonna practice keeping our back in nice, good alignment, okay? So there's a little progression that I wanna show you guys. So first one, you're gonna be on all fours. If you've got any issues with your wrists going straight down, I've got some dumbbells here that I'm going to put so I can keep my hands a little straighter. Okay, this could be little towels rolled up too. Okay, so it should be comfortable in your wrists. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my back nice and flat, and then I'm going to squeeze my core, kind of tighten my tummy, and then I'm going to take my hand and do a little shoulder tap. And I'm just trying to keep my back perfectly neutral, okay? So when I lift this arm, I don't want my shoulder to collapse down at all. Okay, so that would be level 1. If that feels easy to you, we could go to level 2. For level 2, what we're gonna do is just kick the leg straight back, okay? So same thing, I wanna keep my back really straight, so I tighten my core first, and then I take the leg and I kick it straight back. Now what you're gonna have to watch out for is arching the back, or kicking the foot too high, right? We want to have that kick be perfectly neutral, okay? So my tummy's tight, my back is straight, and I've got the arm out, all right? If that feels easy also, we can go to level 3. So level 3, we're going to get the opposite arm involved, okay? So my left leg is going to kick out. I'm going to have my tummy tight. I've got my back neutral, and then I'm going to take my right hand, and I'm going to reach it out in front of me, okay? And I'm going to hold that. That's going to be tough for some balance. And then I'm going to take the arm back in and the leg back in. Okay, so left leg kicks out, spine is nice and straight, tummy's tight, and then the right arm reaches. And then back down. Okay?
So those are 3 simple strengthening and 3 simple stretches that you can do to help maintain and increase your strength and mobility. And they're really easy to work into your day. Like I said, starting the morning with the stretches is great. And then the other strengthening exercises, very simple to do, just take a few minutes a day, but it's really beneficial in keeping you going. So remember, if you feel severe pain, stop working and rest before you attempt it again. If you're in pain the day after gardening, reduce the amount of activity that you do the next time. And this sounds really simple, but some of us are stubborn and just want to keep powering through, which can lead to more injury. So a warm bath with Epsom salts relieves pain. I always thought this was a old wives' tale, but apparently it's been scientifically proven. Heat and cold therapy can be helpful in easing joint pain, and always talk to your healthcare provider if your pain persists. So now on to concept number 9. We've got 2 case studies. The first case study concept 9, is a transformation performed by a woman in her 30s. She purchased this house in 2015. At that time, it was 115 years old. Um, the house was bank owned and had been inhabited by squatters. So some of the things that she had to hire out, like the painting, the window replacement, and building a fence. The rest of the landscape, except for the very front entry where she had pavers laid, she did all of this work herself. So this is the area when she bought it, and this is what it looks like now. And right here was the front door, or is the front door. This is what it looks like now. So the fence, again, the fence, paving, and garden prep were hired out, but the planting and installation was all done by the owner. She removed 4 grapevines, a lilac, a rosebush, and traveler's joy, all from this one area during a family devining party. It took all day. The area in front of the house was a weedy lawn and lots of vining plants, and it's down below the level of the road by about 2 feet. So the courtyard was excavated all by shovels and wheelbarrows in sweat equity. And then she put down a weed cloth and 3/4 inch clean gravel to help with water movement, keeping the water off from the surface of the ground there, and then pea gravel. And that again is not for a pathway, but for a patio. This is all contained so the gravel has nowhere to go. It's really nice to walk on. It's very soft and lovely. So the container garden she has, that's one of the things that we talked about, low maintenance gardening. That's watered during the summer, as well as the perimeter garden. The fence provides privacy from the street. The pallet bench was made by the homeowner. The fire pit is also in this area, and it has a minimal smoke, and then a wood top makes it double as a table. So here's the completed renovation of the courtyard and front entrance to the house. It offers privacy. It offers low maintenance. It was mostly do-it-yourself. It has an entertaining space and a separate potting bench and barbecue area right by the kitchen. All done on a very low budget and just a lot of sweat equity. Case study number 2 is a garden by a garden designer in West Lynn. And Jane's husband, Peter, had learned that due to health issues, he would need to use a wheelchair in the very near future. They talked about selling their craftsman house in Selwood and moving into a senior living facility. And this was just not a happy place for either one of them. So after discussing their options, Peter came home from playing golf one day and told Jane they were going to find a house that would work for him when he needed to use a wheelchair. And he had found 3 that he wanted to look at the next day. So Jane told me that she practically did cartwheels around the house. She was so excited. As a gifted artist and garden designer, having a place to garden and be with her beloved husband was a balm to her soul. They found a single-level 40-year-old home on a level 1/4 acre lot, and Jane set about reimagining how the garden could function for Peter and be a delight to the eyes and senses as well. You can see here, this is their lot, and that all of these existing evergreens are there, and they create deep shade all in the front of the house, but then the back is more sunny. So that was one of the design considerations she needed to take into account. This is the front yard when they purchased it. And this is, as you can see, all just mulch. There are a few Japanese maples, but there's no way to get from the driveway into the house. I mean, you get into the house, but you can't get around here to the backyard. But to get to the backyard, you kind of had to go through the house. So this is the pathway that they created from the entry. And it's just beautiful, soft curve with this lovely accent of mortared in bluestone in the curve. And it's just, this just intrigued me. I just thought it was charming. And then low maintenance plants, the ferns are all native to the area. A lot of hostas that we've talked about, low maintenance. So this is kind of a carefree garden. The yard had a few rhododendrons, but these were one of Peter's favorites. Jane told me she's really not much a fan of rhodies, but she kept them because he loved them. He loved boxwood and roses and rhodies. Jane's garden aesthetic is more about texture and color. So when you're creating a garden to age and place and defining what's important to you personally, in success stories, there's a lot of give and take. So for Jane, who loves form and texture and color, that is the backbone of the garden. And for Peter, there was a boxwood in a pot right by his favorite chair outside, and most of the rhodies were kept and pruned up so that they looked more like trees. So this is the area right here by the chimney here. Look at the beautiful texture that she's created here with the podophyllum, the branch structure of the rhodies. It's just a lovely look. The landscape installer was Patrick Handley, and he came up with some really great solutions. Jane loves the bluestone. So that was used as accents throughout the garden. You saw it in the circle shape. And then here's some on the main seating area, the patio. You can see all of the lawn that they took out. And so there's this great wheelchair access, but then there's a little bit of mounding going on here with some pathways to go up into that, which is not necessarily wheelchair friendly, but it was easy for Jane to get up, and she does some maintenance there. And then the rocks and the colored balls, zero maintenance, charming accent point. This is the vegetable garden before. This is it now. I love all the different heights of the Corten planters. Jane loves tomatoes, so she really wanted to have the vegetable garden. So she's got tomatoes and lettuces and herbs, and Peter's favorite rhododendrons were preserved as well. So Jane has a few tips. As well as being a garden designer, she used to work for the nursery trade. And she said, when you're planting a garden, buy multiples of plants, not just one of each kind, as tempting as that can be because you want to try all the different ones. But if you want to create a cohesive landscape, buy multiples and plant them in swaths so that your eye flows through the garden. And then always have a really wonderful place to sit and rest in your garden. And this is, again, the concrete patio that's less expensive, but very functional. But then the bluestone as an accent just to make her heart happy. So that's it. We've gone through a lot of different things. Let's run it through quickly to make an assessment. You want to reduce repetitive chores. You want to plan your hardscape solutions first. Accommodate your climate and your soil. Choose plants wisely. Use problem solving. If you're having a difficulty, think outside the box and create ways that you can make gardening easier. Care for your garden in ways that are low maintenance, and care for the gardener with the proper tools, the proper posture, and then getting some good stretches and some good strengthening to keep your body going as best as it can. And then there's low maintenance on a budget. And we ran through some of very effective ways to garden for low maintenance, but on a tight budget. And then the beautiful, professionally designed wheelchair accessible garden. As Anne Lovejoy writes, using the principle of sustainable gardening, I've learned to make beautiful, abundant, generous gardens that need only a few hours of maintenance each week or each month during the off season. It just makes sense. So here's to some wonderful garden plans that you have going, and I hope you've been inspired. Thank you so much for joining us.